"Ma'am, this place isn't for browsing," the woman behind the counter said, barely glancing up from her phone. "We don't carry cheap pieces here." The young woman raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She moved slowly through the store, eyes scanning the velvet-lined displays filled with diamonds, rubies, emeralds. She stopped at one particular piece, a delicate platinum bracelet studded with tiny sapphires. The manager, now irritated, stepped in front of her. "I told you already, these pieces start at 5 figures. We're not a museum. If you're not buying, you'll need to leave." Still, the woman said nothing. She simply looked at the bracelet one last time and smiled faintly. The manager scoffed. "People like you always come in thinking they can manifest something expensive just by staring at it long enough." That was the first time someone else in the store looked up. A man by the register frowned slightly, clearly uncomfortable. But the woman didn't flinch. Instead, she walked to the door and looked back over her shoulder. "I'll only be a moment," she said. "Don't go anywhere." The manager rolled her eyes. "Yeah, I'll be right here, waiting for your fairy godmother." What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the woman who had just walked out didn't need a fairy godmother. She was the owner of the entire luxury chain. But let's rewind. Her name was Zaria Langford, and she had built her empire from scratch, starting from online custom jewelry sales in her college dorm to becoming the CEO of Langford Luxe, a brand now carried in over 60 boutiques across the country. What set her apart wasn't just her designs. It was her ability to understand what people wanted before they even said it. And now, as a silent majority owner of one of the city's most prestigious jewelry stores, she'd come to this particular location unannounced, disguised in simplicity, just to get a feel for how customers were treated. And what she found? It wasn't just disappointing, it was humiliating. Not for her, but for the business that carried her name. She didn't need to storm out in anger. She didn't have to yell or cause a scene. Zaria had learned a long time ago that silence was often louder than rage. Outside, she made one quick call. "Is Carson in?" she asked. "He's in the office," her assistant replied. "Do you need him?" "Yes," she said. "Tell him to meet me at 45th Street in 10. We're doing a performance review." 10 minutes later, the glass doors swung open again, but this time Zaria wasn't alone. A tall man in a navy blue suit walked in beside her, followed by 2 women with clipboards and iPads. The energy shifted immediately. The manager blinked. Hi. Welcome to, She trailed off as her eyes locked on Zaria. "Wait, weren't you just—" Zaria didn't smile. "You said this wasn't a museum," she said calmly. "I agree. So I'm here to make sure it doesn't become one, by removing the things that don't belong." The manager laughed awkwardly, still not understanding. "I was just doing my job," she offered. "We've had people come in off the street trying to steal. You can't be too careful these days." "I agree," Zaria said again. "But you weren't careful. You were careless." The man beside Zaria stepped forward. "I'm Carson Ward, head of corporate operations. We're conducting a surprise internal audit. We'd like to speak to your staff. Is the assistant manager in today?" The manager's face went pale. No, I mean, yes, but he's on lunch. Wait, what's going on?" Zaria turned her back and began walking through the store again, this time with a different energy. The same bracelet still lay on display. She picked it up, turning it slowly in her fingers. "5 figures, you said?" she asked over her shoulder. "That's it?" The woman swallowed. Yes, it's a limited edition. We only have one in stock." Zaria glanced at Carson. Mark it as discontinued, she said. We'll replace it with something better. Carson nodded, already making notes. Wait, what? The manager said. You can't just… Who even are you? Zaria turned, her gaze steady. I'm the reason you have a job, she said. Or at least, you did. The room fell silent, and just like that, the illusion shattered. The woman she'd dismissed as a nobody was the CEO, the boss, the one person whose opinion could make or break everything. But the story doesn't end here. Because what Zaria discovered during that visit went deeper than one disrespectful employee. She uncovered an entire culture of discrimination, hidden behind polite smiles and polished glass. She started digging, and what she found would shake the foundation of the business she thought she knew. The very next day, Zaria received an anonymous message from a former employee of the same store, a woman named Kalina. The message was short, but powerful. You saw what happened to you in one visit. Imagine what it's like for us every day. That one sentence changed everything. Zaria called for a full review of hiring practices, interviewed former staff, even reviewed security footage and client logs from the last year. What she found was a pattern, certain clients being treated coldly or ignored, while others were given VIP treatment, even if they were clearly just browsing. Even worse, staff members who raised concerns had been quietly pushed out. One former employee, a sales associate named Riva, had been fired for attitude issues. But when Zaria reached out privately, Riva told a different story. I refused to ignore customers based on how they looked, she said. That's all it took. One of the senior managers told me I was making the wrong kind of people feel welcome. Zaria felt sick. She'd built Langford Lux on the idea that beauty belonged to everyone, not just those who looked a certain way. But her brand had been twisted, distorted by people more concerned with image than integrity. The worst part? She hadn't seen it. She'd been too busy expanding, too focused on growth to notice what was festering underneath. But not anymore. Zaria wasn't going to let this continue, not in her name. She started with immediate changes, new training protocols, anonymous reporting systems, regular undercover visits. She reinstated Riva and offered Kalina a senior HR role. Both accepted. And the manager who had insulted her? She wasn't just fired. Zaria made sure her dismissal included a note in the industry registry, a warning for any other luxury retailer that behavior like hers wasn't just unprofessional. It was unacceptable. But the story wasn't over yet. Because a week later, Zaria received a letter. Not an email, a handwritten letter, folded neatly in an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph. It was of a little girl, no older than 8, standing in front of a display case, eyes wide with wonder as she looked at a delicate gold pendant. On the back, a note. Thank you for making space for girls like her. Zaria stared at it for a long time. Then she opened her laptop. She had a new idea, one that would change the face of her business forever. But before she could launch it, she had one last person to confront. Because it turned out, the manager she fired? She hadn't acted alone. She'd been following orders from someone much higher up, someone Zaria had once trusted, and she was about to find out exactly how deep the betrayal went. Zaria stared at the photo one last time before setting it gently on her desk. Someone higher up had enabled that manager. Someone inside her circle. That fact gnawed at her more than the public embarrassment ever could. She could fix the store. She could repair the brand, but betrayal from within? That required something deeper. She called a meeting with Carson and the newly reinstated Riva. No boardrooms, no formal reports. Just a quiet conversation behind her office's closed doors. "There's someone feeding this culture," Zarya said plainly. And it didn't start with the manager. She was too confident, like she knew she'd be backed. Carson nodded. "We've reviewed her email history. A lot of it's deleted, but IT flagged one recurring contact she had frequent off-the-record chats with, someone at the regional director level." "Name?" Zarya asked. He hesitated, then replied, "Lyndon Crow." Zarya's jaw tightened. She had known Lyndon for years. He'd been with Langford Lux since before they opened their second boutique. He was charming, clean-cut, and corporate through and through, a numbers guy. She'd trusted him because he always delivered profits, on time and above projections. She had no idea he might be the rot behind it all. Zarya requested all his internal communications be pulled for review. What she found was a carefully masked pattern. Mentorship emails laced with subtle code words, performance reviews that praised exclusivity, and budget allocations that favored locations with a cleaner clientele. It was cold, clinical, and calculated. Even worse, she discovered a side project Lyndon had launched, a VIP client program that had never passed through her approval. It claimed to cater to high-net-worth individuals, but the inclusion criteria were disturbingly vague. Race wasn't explicitly listed, but client logs told the real story. 92% of VIP-designated clients were white. Only 3% were black. Zarya leaned back in her chair, stunned. He had used her brand, her dream, as a veil for elitism. And while he made her millions, he quietly choked the soul out of everything Langford Lux was supposed to represent. It wasn't just a performance issue now. It was personal. She scheduled a one-on-one meeting with Lyndon. He walked in, all smiles, his usual swagger in place. "Zarya, I heard about the incident at the 45th Street store. Unbelievable, right? I've already spoken to legal and—" "Sit down." Her tone stopped him cold. "I've read everything, Lyndon. The emails, the reports, the program you've been running behind my back." He blinked. His smile faltered. "I'm not sure what you mean. The VIP initiative was cleared through ops. I thought you'd want to attract a premium crowd." "By excluding people who look like me," she snapped. "Spare me the corporate gloss. You created an entire system designed to weed out the very customers I built this company for." He raised his hands, trying to recover. "Zarya, please. You know I've always had the brand's best interest in mind. I was optimizing, refining the experience." "Refining?" she echoed. "You mean purifying, don't you?" Lyndon's expression darkened. "You're blowing this out of proportion." She stood up. "And you're fired." "Fired?" He laughed bitterly. "You're not serious." She leaned in, voice low but lethal. "This company rose because I refused to let people like you define luxury. You want to work somewhere that rewards prejudice? Go find it. But not here. Not in my house." He opened his mouth to speak, but Carson appeared at the door with a security officer behind him. Zarya didn't say another word. Lyndon left without protest. The fallout was immediate. News spread fast. Employees started speaking up, subtly at first, and then boldly. Zarya launched a confidential channel for complaints and suggestions, and within days, it was flooded. Not just from that one store, but from others across the country. Patterns were emerging, microaggressions, favoritism, discrimination hidden behind policy. She needed a cultural reset, and not just with words. That's when she returned to the letter. The photo of the little girl. What had struck her most was the look in that girl's eyes. Wonder, possibility. It reminded her of herself at that age, standing outside a store window she couldn't afford to enter, dreaming of what she might one day own. That little girl deserved more than polished marketing and apology statements. She deserved to walk into a store and feel seen. Zarya decided to launch a new initiative, Lux for All. It would start with redesigned store experiences, open spaces, inclusive advertising, community partnerships. But more importantly, it would empower young talent, especially Black designers, artisans, and creatives, to become part of the luxury industry through scholarships, mentorship, and internships. She wasn't just fixing a broken culture, she was building a new one. Her first move? Holding a town hall. Not corporate, not rehearsed. Just honest conversations with every employee, streamed across every location. She stood in front of the camera and spoke plainly. I failed to see what was happening. I failed to hear those of you who tried to speak up. But I hear you now, and I promise you this. Things will change, starting with me. The feedback was overwhelming. Some cried, others applauded, many simply nodded, relieved to know they were finally being heard. And still, Zarya knew some wouldn't like the changes. In fact, 2 investors pulled out quietly a week later, citing a shift in brand identity. She let them go. Because the truth was, she didn't want their money. She wanted their space, so she could build something better. One morning, while preparing for a press interview about the new initiative, Zarya received a call from Riva. You're going to want to see this, Riva said. Check your inbox. Zarya opened the email. Attached was a video clip from inside another Langford Lux store, this time in Dallas. A customer, young, Black, dressed modestly, was browsing when a sales rep walked over and said something shocking. We usually get our urban visitors after 5. Try coming back then. The video had been taken by another shopper and uploaded online. It was already gaining traction. Zarya's stomach turned. Not again, not after everything. But this time, she didn't hesitate. She called Riva. I'm flying down today, no warning, no heads up. If this is still happening, I want to see it with my own eyes. What Zarya didn't know, though, was that the Dallas location was already a powder keg, and her visit would uncover something far more dangerous than bad customer service. Because hidden in the books of that store was a financial scheme that threatened to take down more than just one employee. It threatened to unravel her entire company. Zarya arrived in Dallas under the radar. No entourage, no press, no advance notice to the staff. She stepped into the store like any other customer, this time dressed sharply but discreetly. Her eyes swept over every display, every interaction, every micro-expression of the employees as they noticed her. Some greeted her politely. One recognized her and stiffened. But most went about their day without realizing the owner herself had just walked in. She requested to speak with the store manager, a man named Devin Parrish. He came out of the back with a polished smile, the type of smile trained by years in retail, but lacking any genuine warmth. Ms. Langford, he said, masking his surprise. We weren't expecting you. I know, she said simply. That's the point. She asked him to walk her through daily operations, observe the sales floor, and explain the store's procedures regarding customer engagement. Devin spoke in practiced phrases, metrics, protocols, brand consistency. But as he spoke, Zarya noticed the same patterns she had seen in the footage. Employees subtly steering certain customers away from high-end pieces, friendly smiles reserved only for those who fit a certain profile, Even now, while she stood beside him, a younger black woman had just entered the store, and no one had greeted her. Zaria's jaw clenched. "I'd like a copy of your books from the last 6 months," she said abruptly. Devon hesitated. "I can get those sent over from accounting. I want to see them now," she said. Devon blinked, but nodded. She reviewed the files in the back office, just herself and Carson, who had quietly arrived minutes earlier. At first glance, everything looked clean. Inventory logs, sales numbers, commissions. But Carson pointed something out. "There's a discrepancy in the return data," he said. "Look here." Over the last 4 months, this store had processed an unusually high number of returns, particularly on high-end jewelry items. But the strange part? The returned items weren't listed in inventory after being brought back. They simply vanished. Zaria frowned. "That's impossible. We track every item with serial coding." They dug deeper. Using the central system, Carson cross-referenced each supposedly returned item with security footage, and what they uncovered was infuriating. The items had never been returned. Instead, sales were being logged under ghost transactions, refunds issued to fake customers, and the physical pieces were being skimmed from inventory, then funneled to private buyers off the record. It was an inside job. Someone in the Dallas branch was using Langford Lux's own sales system to siphon off merchandise worth over $1.2 million. And Devon Parrish, the manager, he was at the center of it. Zaria called him back into the office. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam the laptop shut. She simply turned the screen around and hit play. The footage showed Devon pocketing a velvet case behind the counter, placing it into his bag, and leaving after hours. Devon's face went pale. It's not what it looks like," he stammered. "Then explain it," Zaria said coldly. He tried to spin it, blamed a sales associate, claimed it was a one-off, insisted he planned to log it later. But the evidence was overwhelming. Email trails, time logs, customer profiles that didn't exist. Zaria stood. "You didn't just steal from me," she said. "You stole from every honest person who works under this brand. You've disrespected their work, their talent, and the customers we built this for." He lunged for an apology. "Zaria, please. I've worked here for 8 years. "And it ends today," she cut him off. "Security is outside this door. You'll be escorted out and reported to authorities. I'm pressing full charges." Devon was removed within minutes. Zaria called an emergency meeting with all Dallas staff. This time, she didn't deliver a speech. She listened, and what she heard was both heartbreaking and galvanizing. Many had seen things. Whispers of inventory going missing. Rumors of shady side deals, but no one had felt empowered to speak. Because at the top of that store was a man who wielded fear and favoritism like tools of control. Zaria promised them 2 things that day. First, full transparency. She brought in external auditors, replaced the leadership with interim managers from her most trusted locations, and created an anonymous reporting platform directly linked to her office. Second, she offered them an opportunity to stay and rebuild the store from the inside. With her. To her surprise, nearly all of them accepted. Because despite the corruption that had crept into this place, most of them believed in the mission. They just needed a leader who reflected it. Over the next 2 months, Zaria made the Dallas branch a pilot location for the Lux for All initiative. She hired 2 young black women from local design programs to contribute to a new collection. She partnered with a nonprofit that helped previously incarcerated women find careers in fashion and sales. Sales climbed, not because of gimmicks or prestige, but because customers felt something real. And for the first time in years, Zaria felt it too. One day, as she walked past the front entrance, she noticed something. A young girl, no more than 7, standing outside the window, eyes wide, staring at a rose gold necklace on display. Zaria stepped outside. "Do you like that one?" she asked the girl gently. The child nodded. "What's your name?" "Kayla," she said. Zaria smiled. "You've got great taste, Kayla." She knelt beside her. "When I was your age, I used to stand in front of a jewelry store window just like this. I promised myself one day I'd own one." Kayla's eyes lit up. "Did you?" "I did," Zaria said. "And one day, you'll own something just as beautiful. Maybe even more." She walked back inside, the moment etched in her memory, because that was the full circle. She hadn't just reclaimed her store, she'd reclaimed her purpose. Langford Lux wasn't about velvet boxes or high ceilings. It was about people like Kayla and the future she deserved. And no matter how many managers she had to fire or systems she had to dismantle, Zaria would make sure that future stayed within reach. For everyone.